Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. This is another Facebook Live version of our podcast here at Absolute Trust Counsel. I am Kirsten Howe, your host, and today I have a guest. My guest is Mary Ballin, who's a financial advisor. We're going to be talking about financial planning for women in transition. So what does that mean, women in transition? Transition could mean retirement. That's a transition. It could mean widowhood. It could mean divorce. It's any kind of change in your life that causes a change to your life. So we're going to be talking about the unique challenges, opportunities, benefits of financial planning for women in transition. And I'm going to introduce Mary officially and better than I just did in a minute. But of course, if you've watched this before, you know we have some housekeeping issues that we have to address first. First and foremost, we are taping this. So if you're watching live and you can't sit through the whole thing, or even better, you want to watch it again, it's going to be a video. It'll be on our website, absolutetrustcounsel.com. It takes us a few days to do our little magic, and by our, I mean somebody else's. I don't do it, but it'll be on our website in a few days. Also, it will be an actual podcast, an audio episode of our podcast. So you can find that also on our website, but you can find it on wherever you listen to podcasts. Whatever platform you are used to listening to podcasts on, you can find it there. Okay, and the second thing is our regular viewers know that we are going to answer questions at the end of the episode. And again, by we, I mean Mary is going to answer questions. So if you have a question at any point, just go ahead and type it in the comment section there on Facebook, and we'll get to it at the end of the episode. Okay, so that's our housekeeping. And now I'm going to, as I said, officially introduce my guest, Mary Ballin. Mary is a financial advisor with Paragon Wealth Management. She takes a very personalized approach to her client relationships. She believes it's important to really understand the client's personal goals in order to be able to come up with a good, solid strategy for achieving those goals. And I think you're going to appreciate that as you see her talking about her work and how dedicated she is to her clients' success. Mary works, of course, with a lot of different kinds of clients. She works with men, she works with couples, but she has a particular affinity for working with women, and particularly women in transition, and that's why I asked her here today. Mary is a certified financial planner, and she's also a certified divorce financial analyst, which is another credential that probably most financial advisors don't have. She has over 20 years of experience in the financial advice world, and you're going to see she's just a really warm, generous, but no nonsense person. And we are so fortunate to have a few minutes of her time here today. So welcome, Mary. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm honored. Yeah, I'm honored, Kirsten. It's I've seen these Facebook Lives and your podcasts in the past, and it's just an honor to be invited. So I hope everybody appreciates what I have to say today. That's all.
Oh, I'm sure they will. And really, thank you. You've been on my list for a long time, and I'm finally making it happen. I'm really excited to have you. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, we here at Absolute Trust Counsel, we work with a lot of women in transition. You can imagine we work with a lot of widows because of the nature of what we do, but we do also work with women going through divorce or who have recently been divorced. And one thing that I see, and I'm wondering if you see, is that there seems to be a certain amount of anxiety or fear even among that particular group around, I guess I would say, am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay? Do I have enough money? What do you see in your world there?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, because here we are in 2020, right? And women have come a long way through the generations, but even today, there's a real fear out there of, we call it the bag lady syndrome, or, my God, am I going to have to eat cat food in my, last years of life?
Right.
And it's interesting. And I think a lot of that has to do with even today in 2020, because there is so much to do in any sort of relationship that there's still a division of work, right? And we still follow those traditional lines where those of us of the female side are the ones that kind of take care of the kids and take care of the house. And yes, we may be working, but we don't necessarily have the primary breadwinner position in the family. And then because we've abdicated kind of the financial stuff over to our male counterpart or our other counterpart, however you want to put it, we've checked out from that aspect of our life, and we've depended on that other person to take care of it for us because we're dealing with the house and the kids and our own job and everything else that goes along with that, right? But then, statistics show we're going to outlive the men most of the time. It doesn't always happen that way, but a lot of the time. And all of a sudden, whether we want it to or not, we're going to be holding that financial bag. And if we haven't been part of that conversation for all the years with our husbands while they've been around, then we feel really vulnerable and we don't know, what's the next step. And that's where I see a lot of scared, really scared because they just don't understand it. They just don't know. I think what's more frustrating is a lot of times, we have a tendency to not want to have those conversations while we can. And we don't want to think about the time when our, spouse or significant's not going to be there any longer. But I think it's really important as a financial advisor to make sure that we're engaging that person that is checked out and seeing if we can bring them in while they have an opportunity.
Oh yeah. While they're still a couple,
right?
Really try to get the non-engaged spouse
to engage.
You got to get engaged. It's a lot of ramping up if you have to suddenly start to understand everything because you're the only one. Yeah.
I mean, I've met women who they don't even know how to get into, they know how to turn on the computer, but they don't, they may not know the passwords of how to get into, whatever the bank accounts and the brokerage accounts and the Quicken, which is doing the cash flow and all of that, if they're even using that. So, it just kind of puts you in a very vulnerable position and sometimes behind the eight ball and a lot of catching up really fast when you're distraught because, right, you've gone through a transition. And I'm not talking about retirement because that you plan for and you wait for the day that it comes. But when somebody dies or somebody says, I don't want to be married to you anymore, or you say, I don't want to be married to you anymore. And, statistics show that actually women ask for divorces 66% of the time. I mean, I was pretty blown away by that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but it's like, I can't, for whatever reason, right? I can't be in this marriage any longer, but they're not thinking about, what does that mean after it's all said and done financially?
Yeah. Right. Okay. So given that there is this fear there and probably based on a lack of knowledge, really, that makes them vulnerable. How do you get started with a client like that?
Yeah, so women are all about the conversation and women are all about making goals. And I say women are, and it's in general, right?
Sure,
There's always exceptions to the rule. So I don't want to sound like I'm generalizing everything under the moon, but, in general, we like to create goals and we like to stick to goals. And especially when it comes to investing, there has to be a why behind it. Whereas traditionally, men come to investing from a more of a win or lose, gain or loss sort of environment. And so women tend to be more conservative but goal oriented. And so I like to start there. I like to start with what do you want to do? This is the bucket that you have to work with. This is, talking about what income do you have to come in? What assets do you have? What do you want to work towards? And that becomes the goal. And I mean, maybe that's a tougher goal than not, but at least it's something to work towards, and what the why is behind it. So that's where I like to start.
Yeah. I would guess that there might be a certain percentage of your brand new clients who would scratch their head at that question. What do I want to work toward?
Right.
So that's what you're like, you have to really start teasing it out.
Teasing it out. And a lot of times I'll start with, a core value type of exercise. What's most important to you? Is it kids? Is it travel? Is it, hanging out with your friends? Is it, whatever it is. Is it nature? Is it, your church? Whatever. Just figure out what is in your heart, because there have been studies that have found that if something resonates with your core values, more often than not, that's what you're going to grasp onto and you're going to gravitate to. And when things get tough, that's what you come back to, is those core values.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you're going to work toward, or be willing to put in effort toward.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you kind of touched a little bit on, I think, although you didn't flat out say it, that perhaps women and men are different when it comes to financial planning and being financial planning clients. What would, in what ways are women a little bit different?
Again, I'm not trying to say that everybody's the same, but when I'm looking at a husband and a wife, most of the time, or a lot of the time, and when we're talking about, risk and what it is that you need to do, I'm finding that women want to be a little bit more conservative, a little bit more, thoughtful, that downside protection is more important to them. And so, that can work in both ways. I think understanding your risk is really, really important, but not to your detriment. I've had, back in my early days when I was still sitting in a brokerage office, and I worked in Castro Valley where I grew up. I'd have women come in and say, well, I'm very diversified. I have a CD in every bank in town. But in these environments with the interest rates where they are, you're probably not even going to keep up with inflation, let alone, be able to.
Yeah, that's not diversification.
And it's not diversification, but, that's a different story altogether. But I just, so sometimes, women there has to be a level of education, and that can be for men too. And sometimes the education is, you don't need to take as much risk as you're taking. But it just comes down to being a little bit more cautious, a little bit, but wanting to do what the right thing is. I mean, lots of studies are out there that actually women in general are better investors than men.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because, it's just because it's not about winning and losing and gains and having something to talk about with the guys. It's about, making your money do what you need it to do.
Yeah, that's a fascinating comment. Yeah, and
I know.
We could probably talk about that particular issue.
That could be a whole other conversation.
That could be a whole other episode.
Yeah. Anybody can look them up. They're all over the web, but it is interesting to read those. And I'm sure there are people out there that just say it's a bunch of garbage and everything, but it doesn't matter where you find some of these research and statistics that are out there, and they're coming from big organizations. It's just what the statistics show. So.
Right. Well, I get that. I've heard from numerous resources that financial planning is not about picking the hot stock.
No, not at all.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah. In my early days when I did work for a brokerage house, and I mean, times have changed over the 20 years. It's hard to believe I've been doing this for 20 years, and I think a lot of financial advisors are getting more on board with the financial planning aspect of it. But I remember early in the days, it was all about, what securities should I buy to make my portfolio really go up in value? And then when I met Norm Boone, actually, who was the founder of the original registered investment advisory firm that I worked for. I mean, he was the one who actually taught me that, financial planning is all encompassing and investment management is just one piece of the financial planning pie. It's the ways to the means. And all of a sudden it was like this light bulb went on in my head, and it was like, God, that makes so much sense. Yeah. If it all is working together. And so the key to financial planning is to get all of those different aspects of your financial life, your insurances, your taxes, your estate planning, your investments, retirement plans. It all needs to work together as a well-greased machine and not be in these separate silos that are acting on their own. And I think that to me is the beauty of financial planning, is being able to get everything to talk to each other.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now I know you sometimes help women who are actually in the divorce process, as opposed to I just recently got divorced, but they're still involved in sorting it out, filing everything. Maybe they're in mediation. And I've got two questions about that. We talked about, you have this specific credential relating to divorce, and I want you to talk just a little bit about what that means and how that helps you to work with women who are, or men as well, but we're talking here today about women who are divorcing.
Yeah, I decided to get the CDFA, the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation, because here I'm focusing on women and women in transition, and one of the big ones is divorce. And I've never gone through a divorce. I've been married to my husband for 30 years. And last time I checked, he's still going to keep me around. So that's a good thing. And vice versa, but
more important.
I wanted to understand that process better. And so by going and getting the designation, it really helped me understand what the process is when somebody does go through a divorce. And I don't use my CDFA the way a lot of CDFAs use their designation. I mean, there are CDFAs that will literally be expert witnesses and, write quadros and do all. I don't do any of that. I want to help people that are going through divorce understand the assets that they do have amongst the marital property and separate property, and figure out what are the best assets for you to negotiate for. I mean, in California, as we all know, we're in a community property state, and that at a very high level just means that the marital assets have to be split 50-50. But that doesn't mean that every asset itself has to be split 50-50. It's just, if there's $2 million of assets, each spouse needs to walk away with $1 million.
Right.
But every dollar is not created equal. Right. And when I say that, the house is a huge asset, but we can't take a piece of the house to go to the grocery store. Our retirement accounts are usually fairly good size assets, but there's penalties to be able to take money out of those before you're a certain age. And there's an IOU attached to them. So being able to figure out what's the right combination, or at least the combination that's going to work best for you and your circumstances based on where you're at in age and in your own retirement timeline, is going to be really important. I find that the vast majority of the women that I talk to when they're going through a divorce is they really want the family house. And that can be really difficult, especially if you are not the primary breadwinner in the house, because whereas you're splitting all the assets, but the expenses that go with the house don't get split in half. So you've got to be able to afford to maintain the house going forward, and
taxes and insurance.
Right. Maintenance, and the HVAC goes out, or whatever it is, but you just have to be able to afford it. So sometimes it's having a hard conversation with people that says it's really not going to make sense. Or, I'm working with a woman right now where, you can walk away with the house. There's enough assets where you can walk away from the house. And there was some talk about maybe refinancing the house, but she's not going to qualify to refinance for the house because she doesn't have an income. She doesn't have the income to qualify. So the question is, can she get the house and enough of the other assets to be able to get her, where she needs to be, at least to a point where she, her kids are completely independent. And I mean, because that's what a lot of it revolves around, is just trying to keep stability for the children.
Oh yeah. Keep them in the same high school district or what have you.
Right.
Which is linked to where you live. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I mean, the big thing is well, if I sell this house, where am I going to be able to live? Because, we do live in a fairly expensive area. Last time I checked.
That's an understatement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially on one income.
Right.
That's rough. Okay. Well, that's very helpful. I wanted to kind of get a sense of what are the issues that you can help with when someone is actually going through a divorce, and it's kind of like, let's pick and choose the assets. Of course, you can come up with a plan, and it's going to depend on husband's attorney saying, okay.
But that's also, the other thing I'll do is, because spousal support always comes into that, and then there's other pieces that make things complex: deferred compensation, equity compensation, all these sort of different things, and everything's negotiable, right? I mean, as far as I understand, child support is about the only thing that is a non-negotiable. There's certain rules around that, but everything else is pretty much negotiable. And so, like the woman I'm working with right now, I've said, okay, well, here's the range, and I've given her scenarios for, if you get this in spousal support, this is what it looks like. If you get this next level down, it's going to look like this. And this is kind of your point of no return. Try to negotiate for anything above this point, and give up something else, right?
Right.
If spousal support or family support is going to be that important.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's just tremendously valuable to not only women who aren't financially savvy, but anybody who's going through a divorce, trying to figure out what's the true value of these assets that we have. As you pointed out, the retirement assets, you have a partner in there, which is the IRS, and take that into account.
And the state,
and franchise tax board. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So those dollars are not the same dollars as your bank account. Your
bank account or your brokerage account, just depending on how they're
you taxed. Need somebody's help to run all the numbers and run the scenarios, and that's really valuable. That's really valuable.
I think so.
Okay, so I think we need to go. I could talk to you all day, but we
I can talk all day.
So. we don't have any problem between you and me coming up with conversation. It might not be what everybody else wants to hear. So what I'm saying here now is, let's look to our questions, because we do have a couple of questions.
Very good.
From viewers. All right. So the first question: how do I pick a good financial advisor that knows what they're doing?
Right. Right. No, I think it's really important. And, because God knows, I mean, thanks to people like Bernie Madoff, people like me can get, a bad rap. But I think the first and foremost is, you need to talk to somebody, and you need to try and see if you can build a rapport and see what's most important to that financial advisor. Are they all about, I'm going to get you the biggest and best return, or are they about, I want to hear what you want, and we'll figure out what's the best way to invest. The other thing is, and I'm biased, right? But, look for somebody with a CFP. If they have a CFP designation, that means that they have gone through all the education and everything to really look at your financial life holistically.
Yeah.
It's
a rigorous training program. It's a lot.
Yeah. So, the minimum requirements are a bachelor degree, and then there are specific courses that you have to take. I did mine through UC Berkeley Extension Program. And the testing itself has been changed quite a bit since I've taken it, but I think it still is pretty much an all-day exam that you have to sit through, and it covers, taxes, insurances, estate planning, retirement planning, investment planning, and then there's an ethics portion of it. And as a CFP, I am held to a fiduciary standard. So that means that I have to put my client's interest ahead of my own. And that then brings me to the next thing that you need to understand is the compensation. How is the financial advisor being compensated? Everybody's entitled to a paycheck, right? And there's great people that are out there in the different types of compensation worlds, but the most popular compensation is a fee-based compensation, which just simply means you're paying the person a fee, and then they're also probably getting some sort of compensation off of the securities in your portfolio. And that is opposed to a fee-only advisor, which is only being compensated by the clients. And that's normally taken as a percent off of the assets under management. There won't be anything in the portfolio itself that's actually paying the advisor.
Okay. So the main point there is you need to understand it. You need to ask that question. You need to be okay that whatever the compensation structure is okay with you.
Yeah. And you know what, Kirsten, I have a checklist because people have asked me that. How do I know, you're the person I want to work with? And I actually have a checklist that I offer out to prospective clients just to give them. It's like, here's a bunch of questions that you might want to consider asking a financial advisor when you're interviewing them. And feel free to ask me any other questions on this list as well. And I'm happy to send it to you, Kirsten, if people reach out to you and say, can you send me that list? So
why don't you do that? And we can make that available in connection with the podcast episode. We can actually make that available to anybody who watches this in the future. We can link those two. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. So let's go. I think a couple more questions. Okay. How difficult is it to start financial planning for myself? What sort of information will the advisor need from me?
Yeah, a lot. I will tell you that. I will say to get going on financial planning, it is, you have to be ready to be doing some homework because I need to know everything. So sometimes I joke with people and I say, I'm going to flip you upside down and I'm going to shake you till everything falls out of your pockets, right? Because I'm going to need every insurance policy, homeowners, auto, life, disability, long-term care. I'm going to want to get a copy of your estate plan so I understand, what it is that you want to happen with your estate. I'm going to want every bank account, every brokerage account, every retirement account. I want the booklet for your employer to understand what all your benefits are. And so, again, I have a checklist that I give people so that they can go, okay, got it. Oh, tax returns, another big one. A couple of years of tax returns. Yeah. So you can see kind of patterns that happen. Yeah. And so the beginning of it can be, a little onerous to people, but it's the only way we can do good work. As is to be able to understand all of that and then give you advice. And, and sometimes the easiest way for me to get it is just to go to your advisor and ask them. But of course, that has to come with your permission so that I can reach out. And I'm always hopeful that, the other professionals will be collaborative and we can then work together. Because I think that that's important too, is that, all of your professionals need to be your team.
Right.
And work for you.
Right. Yeah. So there's a certain amount of pain in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but well
Yeah,
worth
it's doable.
Yeah,
It's doable. And
yeah.
I mean, some people have pretty simple situations, but oh, and the one I didn't touch on is, how are you spending your money? What's it costing you to live every month?
Oh,
And
yeah,
where's,
yeah.
and you may not want to tell me how much you're spending
That's
on
yeah.
Starbucks coffee, but I'll share with you how much I spend on Starbucks coffee if you share with me.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's, for me, that would be the most painful part of it, is actually opening up my credit card statement and saying, oh yeah, this is what I've been doing every month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's different ways to do that too. It depends on how much detail you want to get into on that. But I mean, it can be done at a very high level. This is what I'm paid. This is how much is left in the checkbook at the end of the month. And the difference is how much I spend. And then we, after we annualize that, we can back out the big things like, property taxes and homeowners insurance, and then come up with a net number of what it costs you to actually live on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I have one more question. Let's see. Okay. So if you have an advisor that you've worked with for a while, but they only talk about investments and how they're doing, how can you figure out if you have enough money to retire?
Yeah.
That's like a rhetorical question, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there are rules of thumb out there, because what it comes down to is how much income can your portfolio generate for you? And I just don't mean like I have a bunch of bonds and they spin off, interest payments to me. And especially in this interest rate environment, I'm what's called a total return, which I know is very Greek to everybody, but it's looking at both, bonds and stocks to be able to generate what you can withdraw from your portfolio on an annual basis, and be able to have that portfolio regenerate itself so that over time it sustains you for the rest of your life. And there are rules of thumb that can be used, but my bias is you need to do some lifetime needs analysis. Right. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that there are some really good investment advisors out there, but they don't believe in the financial planning process. Right. And so, you just have to ask yourself, how important is that question? And do you want to kind of just take the chance that there will be enough?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for the viewers or listeners, that's a super important distinction. Investments is not financial planning.
Right.
Investment management is not financial planning.
Right.
You got to have both, but you have to have both.
Right. I mean, and I tell people all the time too, when I'm kind of asked that question, if you're looking for the biggest and best and swinging from the chandelier returns, I'm not your girl. If you want to figure out what's the right return for your circumstances, that's where I would play nicely and, on your team, because I don't want to be responsible for somebody dying early with an ulcer because they've taken on too much risk that they didn't need to take. Right. And by the same token, I don't want to be that person that makes your fear of eating cat food at the age of 90 come true because I've allowed you to not take on enough risk in your portfolio. Right. So, it's a mathematical equation, that a financial planner goes through with the help of software. I'm not calculating these things, with a pen and paper. I'll admit, no. But I think, for me and because of my biases, that's where financial planning, that was the aha moment I had all those years ago when I first, I left the brokerage world and I joined a registered investment advisor, and that focused on financial planning first and investment management as well.
As a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. As a part of that versus, so many out there that are in investments are the end all be all, and the rest of it, as long as you're getting high enough rate of return, everything will work.
Right. Okay. Very good. that's it for the questions. And so, Mary, I really just want to thank you so much. I think what you've covered here today is so valuable, so important, and I'm just really grateful. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's an honor to be able to be here with you. You know, I just love what I do, and I love to watch, you know, especially women, because that's my passion. But you know, sit up a little taller and all of a sudden see that they get that, oh, I can do this. I've got this. You know, I've got this, and it's really rewarding. So thank you so much for allowing me to be on, you know, this Facebook Live with you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Mary Ballin with Paragon Wealth Management.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye, Mary. All right. So thank you all for joining us today. And I'm just going to remind you again that this episode will be available on our website, absolutetrustcounsel.com. It'll also be a podcast episode, which you can access however you normally access podcasts. We're going to have Mary's list of questions that you should ask a prospective financial planner. That will be on our website for you to download. And there's a whole lot of other resources on our website. We have so many articles, blogs, newsletters, videos, podcasts, all kinds of really valuable information. So check it out, absolutetrustcounsel.com. And if we can be of any help to you, just give us a call or schedule an initial interaction with us on our website, absolutetrustcounsel.com. Thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to connecting with you next time.